Hello everyone, good morning and welcome to today's Bridging and Commercial virtual roundtable. Today's topic is a little left field for us, but nonetheless very important. We are dedicating this live session to the world of people, recruitment and engagement. Thank you everyone for being here, for tuning in live. My name is Caron Schreuder and I am the Managing Director at Medianett Publishing. Thank you, first of all, to John from Franklin-Hackett for partnering with us for this, and also to the rest of our panel who will shortly be introducing themselves and explaining why they're here and why this is important to them. One of the top challenges facing our market currently is a shortage of talent and the fiercely competitive angle that recruitment has taken on in our sector. Daily, we hear of lenders and brokers struggling to find the right people. Although growth is a key driver for those wanting to hire, attrition is definitely also worth tackling. Taking a prevention is better than cure approach, today's discussion will seek to improve staff retention through better engagement, which will result in a better return on employees' investment. Coming out of what is being referred to as a time of mass reflection and has also been dubbed the Great Resignation, it has never been more pertinent to consider the impact of your team members and the way in which they feel valued in their roles. Central to our conversation today is the GC Index. This is an organometric, not a personality tool, that is based on empowering organizations and individuals by measuring impact. It supports both performance and culture within a business and will certainly make you view your teams and internal management styles in a whole new light. I personally underwent the assessment a while back and found the experience to be incredibly revealing, and I was able to put the findings to use almost immediately with my own team, allowing me to develop a deeper understanding of how we all fit into the company's success. Plus, it means that you can confidently say you're a game changer, for example, and it's backed up by science. Huge bonus. So for now, I'd like to invite you to sit back, relax, and take in the information from our panel. We do have a Q&A widget available to those who are listening in live. You can put in questions there and I will pass those on to the people that we've got on screen. As per usual, you will find a recording of this on Bridging and Commercial as of next week, should you wish to share it with any peers or colleagues. We'd like to get the word out as far as possible. This is a very useful session that we hope people will take into their businesses and kind of use it to boost and grow the team engagement. So, without further ado, I am going to hand over to John to tell us a bit more about who you are and why are you here today.
Thanks, Caron. Hi, folks. So yes, I'm John Franklin-Hackett. I'm the CEO of Franklin-Hackett Limited, and what we basically do is we help business owners to get more value out of their employee costs by making it very simple for them to understand exactly what gets their employees out of bed in the morning. And that's basically what we do. The purpose of this session is to share what we've learned working in the specialist finance industry with businesses like yours, and how we've found that we've been able to support businesses in getting a competitive edge and improving their bottom line by getting their staff completely engaged in the business in a way where they treat the business as if they owned it themselves. That's me.
Thanks very much, John. Piragash.
Hi, I'm Piragash. I'm the founder of Totum Finance, and we are a small boutique brokerage in the specialist finance space. And we are users of the GC Index, and certainly, you know, our core engagement is with John's company.
Brilliant news. Damani, we can just about see you in that wonderful zoomed out office shot there.
I am Damani Johnson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Glenhawk. We are a specialist lender, and my primary reason for being here is actually to hear a bit more around this tool and what it can do to assist us with our recruitment process. We're in a fortunate position. We're growing at an unbelievable collaborate. Anything that can assist us with these endeavors will certainly be a bonus. So that's my kind of purpose for being here.
Thanks, Damani. Jamie.
Hi everyone. Yeah, my name's Jamie Pritchard. I'm the sales director at Glenhawk. Not sat in the offices with Damani today. Was down there yesterday, but just to back up what Damani's saying, yeah, we're a fast-moving company. I've been in the industry for about 20 odd years now, and managing people for 12 years, recruiting longest times, a lot. And I went through the GC index myself with John, probably September onwards last year. It's a fantastic tool. I did tell me I was a game changer, but that was his words, not mine. And yeah, I think it's something that's imperative, just for all the reasons that you said right at the start, Caron, just to really think about when you're trying to get the right talent and actually look at the talent that you've got within.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jamie. So I thought we would kick off with John expanding a bit more about some of the things I introduced in the beginning, the wider picture on people, teams, engagement that we're seeing in a macro sense. Naturally, taking care of your team and making sure that they're valued should always be a priority, but we have seen quite a distinct shift in the way that businesses are viewing their teams and people and how that exchange has developed somewhat. Can you tell us a bit more about that, please?
Yeah, thanks, Caron. So we're noticing a number of trends like everybody else is since COVID. And one of the biggest is that, and this sounds slightly silly to say it because it's almost stating the obvious, but the engagement of your team, your staff, is now more important than it ever was before. Now, there's a number of reasons why it's become more important or become more acute, if you like. One of those is, of course, that people have no longer been working in an office together the way they used to pre-2020. So there's been far more remote working, which means that the normal office relationships and the normal dynamics of a team are no longer there. They're being stretched, and people are therefore having to work in a different way. So that's affecting energy levels, and it's affecting engagement and performance. The other thing as well is that increasingly now, especially in services businesses, and this probably couldn't be more true in specialist finance really, is that your team's engagement and performance is the biggest influencer of your bottom line. And of course, I don't need to tell any of you that, because you know this is what your business is based around. If your team are not performing, if they're not getting the deals, if they're not getting the commission in, you're not going to get the outcomes that you want. So all of this is making the investment that you put into your team more and more critical. So the first key theme that seems to be important at the moment is that employee costs are higher than you think they are. I'm as guilty as anybody else. I'm a business owner the same as you, SME. I have a tendency to look at bald figures, and all of us probably at some point looked at our salary bills, and we've looked at the gross wage, and we've times that by the number of people, and we think that's the cost. We think it's the gross wage bill for the entire team, and of course it isn't. It's more than that. It's the gross wage plus national insurance contributions, statutory holiday pay and sick pay, bonuses, da-da-da. So if your gross wage bill, for example, was £100,000 and you added 20% for on cost, additional costs, then potentially your wage bill is £120,000. So what this means is that your investment in your team is probably the biggest investment you make in the business. It's probably one of the biggest costs, if not the biggest. And so you need to get the maximum return on that investment. So the second key theme is that employees are not engaged every hour of every day. And we have a tendency as business owners of assuming that they are, right? We think we're paying for X number of hours and we're going to get that many hours. But of course, the reality is people are only engaged for a small proportion of their contracted hours. And there's nothing that you or I can do about it, right? Because there's stuff that happens. There's Monday afternoons, there's Monday mornings, there's Wednesday's hump day, Friday's a downhill slope to the weekend, there's bad hair days, there's personal situations, there's childcare, there's what's the weather doing, who came first in the Grand Prix at the weekend, yeah? And all of this affects people's engagement. So the reality is really that you're probably only getting 2/3 of the time you're paying for, and you're never ever going to change that because that is just the way things are. So what's becoming increasingly important now with home working as well, with people's time being less demarcated for work is that getting people's maximum engagement for the time that you have the control over is make or break for whether you can get a return on your salary bill. So you need to make the real productive time count, and that's the third theme. So just one last thing to kind of set up the context, and I think it'd be useful to turn it over to colleagues on the panel. One thing maybe I could suggest that you think about is just right now is think about your team and be honest with yourself. How engaged and energized are they on a day-to-day basis, and rate that out of 10. And very few of you will put 10 out of 10. And if you put 10 out of 10, go back and look again and think, is it really 10 out of 10? Is there no room for them to be more engaged? Because the reason I ask you to do this is because, for example, if you've got 9 out of 10, that's a 10% gap. That's 10% of your salary bill that you might as well throw into the fire. Yeah. So if for example, your staff costs 120,000 and you just said, oh, team's engagement's 8 out of 10, right? That's 20% gap. That's 24 grand a year gone. You know, no return at all. So getting to understand how best to energize people so they treat your business as if they owned it themselves and they give you 100% every single day is never been more important, and that's what this is all about. So that's probably enough from me, I should think. Caron, let's just set up the context.
That's perfect, John. Thank you. You've hit on the key themes that I think we can build on throughout the conversation. So taking it, obviously the people tuning in today, we're talking sector specific guidance and advice and context. So Piragash, coming over to you, you've gone through some recruitment recently, you have been working with John. How much do the themes that John's mentioning chime with your experience that you've had recently?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we're big advocates of the tool. I think the point is that, you know, we all have lots of different positions within the business, you know, and different people. The real eye opener for me was the fact that, you know, you could have 2 or 3 different people all performing, but actually they're performing from different places, and they're looking at the same job from a completely different angle. And as soon as you open that conversation, and because, you know, for me, I haven't always managed huge teams, you know, so I'm often learning the process of how do I get my team to work. But of course, every single member of the team, you know, John talks about 10% you know, reduction in an individual, but the fact is, if you've only got 5 people or 7 people or 8 people, one person is like 20% of your workforce. So if that one person is down, it makes a big impact for the business. And more important than that, I think, you know, we all want to have people in roles that they love and they enjoy, because when that happens, 1 + 1 is equal to 3 or 4 rather than just 2. And that's what, when I first did this with John, for me, I was like, wow, okay, there was some surprising results in terms of, you know, sure, like a bit like Jamie said, surely I'm a bigger game changer than that, you know, type thing. And you know, you sort of bring your ego to this a little bit. But when you then deconstruct this, what we went a bit further. So when we were looking to recruit, the first thing John and I did was, you know, he sort of talked us through, you know, what are you looking for? What sort of person are you looking to do? And we sort of, you know, I'm the sort of person, I prefer to go all in with something and see whether it works. And we actually then went a step further by designing a job advert that speaks to the energy that a person would look at that, and it would be like, wow, that's the job that I want, that excites me. But it also, you know, helps in different ways, because, you know, we had situations where I've actually uniquely got a person in the team with a score in the 10s in one particular quadrant, and actually, you know, it helped me in terms of how I could engage with that person and get the most out of them, because sometimes you as an individual don't know. You know, you can ask someone, what do you want? It's the easiest conversation. But if you don't know what you want, and if you don't know why you behave how you behave, it becomes difficult. And these are all tools. I mean, like, it's not it's not that this one tool is going to solve all HR problems for the future. I don't even think John would agree with that, but it really opens up the conversation. And then, you know, then the tool is as good as the person wielding it. You know, I'll be honest, I wish I had a little John in my office all the time going, don't you remember that little bit? That's what you should be doing, you know, type of thing. But you try and pull the tools that you can, and through the recruitment process, but also ongoing. You know, I try and just check in with the reports before my one-to-ones, just to remind me, you know, to detach me for a moment and go, this is how I should be engaging with that person, because that makes most sense. But also, actually, someone could have a low score in a quadrant. This is something that John taught me. Someone could have a really low score in a quadrant, but as long as you attach that quadrant, like say strategy, but they're a really high implementer, as long as you approach the implementation or the strategy from a implementation perspective, they're like really engaged. So I know why we're talking about strategy. Whereas if you just start talking strategy for the sake of it, potentially they're going to get bored. And then that has made a bit of a difference. Sorry, I've kind of gone on now. But yeah, it really, you know, I feel like we're just scratching the surfaces in terms of what this tool is, but it's great.
For anyone who got lost in among the chat of quadrants, we will be diving into that. But thank you, Piragash. That is useful to know, and it is a very exciting tool. So it's understandable that you then took that and looked at it from all different angles and how to implement in your business. But John will give us a bit more of a précis on the entire thing in just a moment. But just coming over to Damani and Jamie, you are an actively growing lender. You are pretty consistently looking to add people to your teams. What sort of challenges are you facing, and what do you feel like a different way of hiring or different way of viewing people and engagement could help with that?
I think for me, the biggest challenge is not around skill set, it's primarily around culture. So you'll get 100 CVs and they'll all have the required skill set. They'll all have experience, and you'll get them in a room, but the culture is just not there. The fit isn't there. You don't get that same. So I guess if you can eliminate the ones that probably wouldn't fit culturally with a tool such as this, then you're probably more likely to find the right candidate in a quicker time. But also it's around the guys that you have already within the team. You know, so for me, I'm looking at, okay, you know, we have, I don't know, 40 something people in here. And it's like, well, okay, right, what do we do with this person over here who we know has the ability to work? There's one particular person, Jamie, you know I'm speaking of. You know they have the ability to work, but it's how you engage them. It's how you know, they have that skill set, they have the mindset, but it's getting them to be a little bit more engaged and so on. So I think for me, that's probably one of the biggest challenges that we're finding. I do believe that there's competition as far as getting people in the door. There is definitely competition because everyone's hiring at this time. But also it's finding the right person from a cultural fit, and then making sure that they remain engaged once they get into the doors.
I agree with what Damani. I'm just going to try to, obviously, I'm not echoing everything everyone's saying. I'm just going on a different slant. So, and how I think this tool could be used. And from a sales perspective, you know, recruitment's expensive in a lot of ways. It's time exhaustive. You know, going through 100 CVs, as Damani said, or even 10 CVs and interviewing them, that's where a good recruiter, this is where a great tool could actually help you with the language, as John said, as well, of where it's attracting different people in. Everyone thinks they want to be a business development manager. Can they do those bits? And actually, let's then go to the next stage. Should you have all your business development managers, you know, and the leaders and the admin and the sales support all at the same energy levels, all only able to do one thing? That cognitive diversity that someone brings and the different energy levels from different areas is key. You know, I went through the tool and it didn't surprise me the bits that it said I had low energy for. You know, the pragmatism, the they're getting into the real detail. Damani knows that's not me. You know, I'll come in with a big idea of different areas and then get other people to do that. I think that's really important. But just to see what Damani said about the culture. So you're getting the right people for culture, and then everybody, let's say that's the 40 odd that are in the Glenhawk offices, are all there. They're embedded in the culture. They love the culture. But their energy levels, they may not be in the right role now. They may have been when they started. They may not be in the right role for their progression. Well, it'd be much better with this tool to allow us to understand, even if they don't know what their next steps is, to point them in the direction of where their next sort of role would be, the next part of the business, because they've already got that culture. I think that could actually save you money, time, and also see someone grow as well, as they obviously want to. So I'm big into using this, not to talk too long, but I'm big into using this on a sort of onboarding, onwards basis. So it's shaping your training. You know, you even think of the sales guy. How many times do you see a sales presentation that is probably really badly put? You know, there's loads of bullet points on the screen, and it's not really reporting to the energy levels of what the person wants. They want to be sold to. They want to actually show where it is. And there's loads of ways you can use these type of tools to actually identify your audience and your culture of the team, and yeah, grow really ultimately.
I really second that, Jamie, in the sense that it is a huge facilitator of evolution within a team, as well as the hiring and onboarding process. That jumped out at me as well. So, John, we're coming back to you to get a little bit into the nitty-gritty of the GC index, what it's all about, what are quadrants, to enlighten us. And then if you could also pay particular attention to this buzzword around culture that is huge right now. Again, it should always be important, but we are seeing a sea change in people being prioritizing culture in a big way, and how the index can facilitate, support that.
Great, thanks, Caron. So just to set a bit of context, I'm going to show you some pretty pictures in a moment, folks, which will make sense of what everyone's been talking about this mythical GC index thing that we're sort of skirting around the outside of. Just to set the context up, we've been talking all the way through about what energizes people in your business. And when we say what energizes people, what we really need to be referring to is basically what gets people out of bed in the morning, and how does that influence the way in which they want to go about doing the job. So to put this in some context, if you think about what makes up a person, any member of your team, right, you've got personal characteristics, so that's the external shell, yeah. You've then got skills, what can they do? Experience, what have they done and how did that go? Personality and behavior, what are they like, yeah, how do they come across? The other element, and this is the one we don't pay attention to, is what we've been talking about, which is their natural energy to make a contribution. What is it they like to do? How do they go about doing things? So if you've got two people in a business development manager role, they've both been in commercial finance for 5 years, they've got the skills, they've got the experience, they can show you the deals that they've done, they're all great deals, they know your client base, they've got a good black book with them, and you know, it's all great, yeah. They won't go about doing the job in the same way. Their energy in terms of how they want to make an impact in your business will be different. It could be radically different, it could be slightly different, but it will be different. And the secret is to understand what is it that energizes them, and give them a job where they're expected to do that, where doing that produces the right results for the business and they get rewarded for doing it, yeah. Now the issue is, it's really, really hard, as you probably already noticed, to actually understand what the hell gets people out of bed in the morning. And half the time, if you ask them, they won't be able to tell you, right? Because people don't know themselves that well. And a lot of people seem to think that energizing teams is, you know, all about doing away days or buying everybody a bag of chips or running prize draws, you know. I mean, bags of chips are great, but they can't work miracles. So what we need to do is find a quick and easy way to understand what energizes people, and that's the GC index. So I'm going to show you that now. He says, looking at the technology, I shall ask the panel to tell me if this displays. Does it display, folks?
It does.
Okay. Right, so GC index. So what we're looking at here, folks, is a tool whereby we can give any member of your team a questionnaire to complete. that will take them about 10 minutes, and within an hour we will have a way of understanding what gets them out of bed in the morning and how they can make a contribution to your business. That's what the GC index does. It identifies what makes somebody's heart sing, how they want to contribute. And it's a really, really simple model. And this is the model on the screen right now. So there are 5 different ways in which people want to make a contribution, 5 ways that people are energized. So starting from the top right, the game changer is all about being energized by having imaginative, original, creative ideas. It's about seeing the promised land. It's about saying the way I want to make a difference is I want to go out there and have a vision and have an idea. That's what game changer is. The strategist is all about making a contribution by wanting to make sense of things. It's about being energized to walk into the room and say, right, I think this is going on, this is going on, this is going on, and therefore we should do this, and here's the plan. So it's about wanting to understand what's going on and then map out and plan out the route to the future. That's strategist. Implementer is all about being energized to make a difference by getting stuff done. JFDI, give me a task, I'll go and do it. It's about wanting to produce tangible outcomes, tangible achievement. Polisher is all about being energized to contribute by sweating the small stuff. It's about wanting things to be done brilliantly, wanting to continuously improve things and leave a legacy to be proud of. And then Playmaker in the middle is about being energized to make an impact by orchestrating relationships between people, bringing people together, getting people playing nicely together. Yeah, it's not about being a people person, that's different. It's about wanting to get people working well to do stuff. And that's it. It's really, really simple. Language is really simple. There's no, you don't need a reference guide to work out what it means. It's just dead simple language. So a good way of thinking about how this might look in a real world scenario is if you took the metaphor of an orchestra. In an orchestra, the game changer energy would be the composer that wrote the original piece of music, right? They had the idea for the music and created something new and original. The strategist would be the person that arranges the music for the instruments in the orchestra. So they make sense of the music and they work out how should it be played. Yeah. The implementer would be the players playing the instruments. The polisher energy would be the person that tutors the players and gets them playing better and better and better. And then the playmaker energy would be coming from the person standing at the front with a baton, waving it around, getting everyone playing nicely together so the audience gets a great performance, i.e. the conductor. So that's GC index, that's how it works. So this is all about what, to use my description, which is a bit iffy maybe, but what turns people on, right? What's energizing people to make a difference? And you'll see the energies at the top 2 are very much about ideas. The ones at the bottom are about tasks. The ones on the left-hand side of the circle are very pragmatic energies. The one on the right-hand side, they're very obsessive energies. And then the playmaker is about relationships. So this is understanding how people are wired up. Now, the important thing is nobody is one of these things, right? So we're not going to go into your team and say, aha, Simon's the implementer or Jane's the game changer. People have got energy for all 5 of those areas, okay? We've all got some energy for each. What's interesting is what are the proportions of energy they've got for those different things? And then how do those things work together in a way that's unique and compelling to that single individual? And to give you a clue as to how powerful this is, there's over 100,000 combinations of those 5. So the odds that you've got 2 people in your team who want to get out of bed in the morning to do exactly the same things is very, very low. They probably don't. So when we start to look into this is what we see. We score people from 1 to 10 on these 5 energies, and the higher the score, the more intense the energy to do that thing. The lower the score, the less they give a damn, right? So we can straight away take this person and we can see that the 2 things that really, really get this person out of bed is making sense of stuff and planning things out and then going and doing them. And they also like to do things really well, which is the polisher piece. So if this person was a business development manager, how do we think they'd go about making a sale? Well, they'd probably go out and get a really good read on the market. They'd probably want to put all the components of the deal together in a very, very clear, structured way. And then they'd want to go and do the deal. But they'd only do a deal when it mattered, when it was actually of a good enough quality to make it worth it. What would they not be interested in doing? They wouldn't be particularly energized by going and bringing together I don't know, multiple lenders, let's say, with a client, that orchestrating, and they wouldn't be terribly interested about doing it in a very creative, original way. They're quite happy to do it by the book, you know. So this is what we're starting to understand with this model. How are people in your business wired up to make a contribution to your business? And when we look at a team of people like this, for example, then we can start to really see what are the differences between people, how can people best work together, what is the potential, and how could we use people in a different way within the business, right? So for example, let me see here, it was a bit different. Person 4 might be an admin person, okay? 10 in implementer, which means they are completely energized by just getting stuff done. Maybe we just don't limit them to doing admin. Maybe there's other things where we just need someone to get out there and damn well do something where we can actually apply them. You see what I mean? So this is the GC index, folks. This is basically how it works. So I think probably the best thing to do is to turn this over to the panel, and particularly Piragash, to talk about how this works in real life rather than theoretical.
I think that's a good idea. Thank you for that. I think one point I wanted to pull out of that is that a company, an organization, to be effective needs all of those things, all of those people with strong energy in each. Is that correct? Would you say, John?
Potentially, yes, but it will depend on the situation the company finds itself in. So if you're, for example, if this is a company, incidentally, you know, in the case of this company, their focus, their energy in their team is mostly based around getting things done really well together, which is implementer, playmaker. So implementer, get stuff done, playmaker, build relationships. There's absolutely no energy in there for innovation, for original thinking. Now, in a market where original thinking isn't particularly important, that could be brilliant as a team profile. But if the market suddenly changes, then yeah, maybe we need something different in the business, and this is where recruitment comes in. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily need to have all 5, but you know, you would want to look very carefully at whether what you've got is what you need.
Okay, that makes sense. So Piragash, tell us how you used this, how you viewed when you were embarking on your recruitment drive and looking at the team as a whole. How did you utilize the index?
So, I mean, you know, quite pragmatically, you know, as a sort of from a starting position, we first looked at, you know, the roles themselves and what energies we needed for the roles, and then also overlaid with the existing team, and whether that was adding to something like John's just did. You know, you can think that, yeah, this is exactly what I need, but then there's always further strategic input. Now, fortunately, I've got a good strategic score, so I can think about that. And you know, you're also then thinking about whether, okay, just that one person. Now, as a team, by hiring 2 or 3 people exactly the same, what does that do to the overall company? You know, where does that lead us? And then, of course, you know, we're ultimately in a war of talent, right? You know, as Jamie and Damani said, there's great CVs out there. There's people, you know, with lots of experience, but there's also people, to be fair, in an industry where there is, you know, there's not an abundance of talent. So sometimes you might have to hire for potential, for example, you know. And you know, for me personally, if someone's got the right attitude and the right ability to learn, that's always quite attractive, you know, as long as you can then support them. But then it's like, well, do they then also have the energies? You know, you can see the potential there, but does that kind of speak to them? And then sort of finally linking the two in terms of what we did in terms of actually going out and kind of rewording the job advert. That was all about saying, we want, you know, we're not hiring 15 people. You know, we've got, say, 3 people that we're looking to hire. We need them to absolutely love this type of role, because, for example, what you may end up doing if you're not using this is hiring someone for largely an implementation role, and then finding out that actually, although they've got this great CV, they've been kind of fighting themselves because of the salary, because of whatever other reason. And actually, for us as a small organization, putting that person there becomes massively detrimental. So it's, you know, and it's evolving the conversation. And the big eye opener for us was, for John and I, was we hired one person who, when they first did the score, it came through as invalid. And that was because ultimately the individual knew who they were, but felt that they had to fit a different mold in order to do this position. And it was, you know, and John at the time had a very good indication of where they probably sat. And we worked with them. But what it also told me was, this was a person with huge potential, was how do we give them the confidence to be who they are and then massively achieve. And over the 6 months, when we redid the test, and this was the individual that came back, you know, with a 10 in game changer. And it, you know, for them, it was a light bulb moment, because actually over the last 5-6 years of their career, they had always felt like they were always trying to bring these new ideas, but they had to kind of almost be a shadow of themselves in order to fit what the company was doing. Now, obviously, look, you know, all businesses are heading in one direction. There's a culture, there's all those things. But by unlocking it in this person, they then had this huge belief. You know, I'm not going to say that's massively down to me or us, but it was great to see that as a result of being able to look more closely and using the science to aid, what's the result? Well, the result has been, instead of a person that didn't understand themselves and why maybe they were frustrated in the role, it shifted to them absolutely really having a big self-belief in who they are. And I think if you can start with that, then you can use that and harness that to create really positive things for the company. You know, and who doesn't want to be part of that?
Thanks, Piragash. It's really good to hear that experience and ultimately the result of it. There was a term that John used around working with someone's natural energy, which I think makes a lot of sense, to go with the grain of that as opposed to against it, and then fill the company with people who are supported in that way. Jamie, how can you see this being possibly implemented with the Glenhawk hiring strategy or team assessment strategy? How does it sort of resonate with you?
Yeah, it resonates with me a lot. I think it's twofold. Going back to my last answer, I think it can help us shape what the job profiles are the language and what we're looking for. So for myself, Damani, and everybody else that are hiring managers, just to sit down and see exactly what we want from the role. I think it's really important then to align that to where you want the company to be going as well. So it's all aligned to the company goals, and making sure we know where that we need those energy levels then to fit. You know, back to John's answer, you know, is it that we don't need game changers? Well, you know, we want to grow and scale in our business, so we definitely do need game changers and new ideas in that sense, but we do need other areas as well. So shaping that from a recruitment point of view would really be able to help us time and get the right people in itself. But I'm really interested in doing it for the team itself as well, who we've currently got, and just to make sure that we've got the right people in the right areas and that we're able to retain them moving forward as well. And I think it'll just help with, then we do a lot, you know, going back to culture and involved with this, that'll show that we're obviously, you know, really invested in what their thoughts are. I think it's really important to get their shared experiences as well and what they feel it is. I think that's a really good part of culture. Culture is this thing that's talked about a lot, isn't it? Until you've experienced the bad and the good, that's when you really know what a good and a bad culture actually is. But it's actually about listening to everyone in the team as well and what they feel. For example, somebody in my team, I didn't actually write up the role profile for them. I got them to write up the role profiles of what they felt the role needed to do. That gave them the autonomy and actually showed me, in a weird way, the different strengths that they had for the role itself. So why should I put somebody who I perceive, if I'm not that way of thinking, into a box when I can't do the role that I was wanting them to do? then they were showing me some ideas that were going outside of that as well. And I think that gave them a lot of freedom. So I think there's a lot of two-way when it comes to this sort of process and involving your team with it. And I think that will ultimately, back to John's first question, manage the productivity as well, isn't it? Everyone wants to talk about whether someone's won at the weekend, or Liverpool won last night. I had to get that in there, or wherever it may be. But that also helps with them that that their energy will shift right back into doing the role that they want to, not up the cheek Sunday night, Monday morning feeling I've got to get on with that task. So I think there's a lot, and the main thing is you can actually show people within your team. As John says, we don't know really sometimes what energizes us. If you've got that spark, and it's not just bought from coffee, and you got that spark that you think this is really exciting part, you can actually show them that. You can guide them to where their next tasks are really. So I think that's a major part for me, Caron. What about yourself, Damani?
I think for me, if I go back to John's earlier point around what wakes people up, what gets them to take the pack to on a Tuesday morning when everyone's out to work, for me that's probably where I see this tool working best for us. It's looking at, right, this is the team we have currently, so let's park the onboarding part of it for now. This is the team we have now currently. We know that they're performing, but are we getting 80% or 60% or 100%? And for the guys that we're getting 60%, how do we then get them to focus and to deliver a little bit more? Well, clearly it's because we've probably not tapped into what makes them tick, for lack of a better word. And if we can tap into what makes them tick, then we'll get that engagement. But not only the engagement, they will want to do whatever it is that they're doing because it's something that they enjoy doing. And I think that's, for me, is kind of where I see this tool assisting. It's looking at, okay, how do we get them to get a little bit more engaged, to enjoy what it is that they're doing. And it could be you are, I don't know, a salesperson, or sales strategy or the way that we are going about selling does not appeal to this particular individual. And should we allow them to explore the way that they would approach a sales pitch? Jamie may say, this is how I want you to go and sell this particular product. But because of their makeup, it's like, well, actually, this is not how I want to sell this product. So I'll do it because you've asked me to do it, but I'm not really going to give it my all, am I? Because it's not what makes me tick. Whereas if they're allowed to use whatever is making them tick, then the energy level goes up. They're happy to go out. They speak about it or action it in a manner that is relevant to them. And so you get more out of them. So then more business comes through the door because actually, you know what, I'm more engaged now. And I think for me, that's where I see the value in this tool.
Mm-hmm. I agree with all that. I actually, it made me think of some ways that, going back to that presentation point, that a lot of us on here in bridging, we see the power of bridging, we see that. We speak to a lot of brokers that don't even know how to sell it or don't know the benefits of it. So me as a game changing sort of up there thinking, come on, let's go to it, let's lead everyone to this promised land. Am I speaking to the pragmatists in the room? Am I really selling them the idea of what that is? But more importantly, if we've got a project within Glenhawk, have we got the right people in the room for that project? Have we done that through the energy levels that suggested that we needed as well? We don't need just everyone just being strategists. We need the pragmatists, the implementers in the room as well for that. So there's lots of ways we can do it, Caron.
Sorry, was that you, Piragash?
It was. But you go, John. You're the authority. You go.
Bless you. So yeah, no, just one thing I think is really important, actually, just building on those points, is in specialist finance, the influence of this combination of energies in people who are out there working to secure deals couldn't be more critical. I saw a really good example of this actually with a client where they had someone in a key account manager role, and they were basically there to do deals, and their GC index profile was 10 in strategist, and I think it was then quite high in implementer, and then there wasn't much going on anywhere else. And the problem they had with this individual, they came with a great reputation for doing deals where they'd been working previously, and previously they'd been working in a larger firm. It was a different sector. It wasn't specialist finance. It was something else. And they'd done really well. And so they brought them into the role. And after 3 months, they'd done no deals. And they thought, what's going on with this person? You know, they're meant to be. They'd won awards for being a great salesperson. And what transpired was their energy, because it was so massively skewed towards strategist. And remember, I said strategist is all about making sense of things and mapping things out. What was going on was this person couldn't make sense of the landscape of specialist finance because they were coming into it from a different industry, and they started during COVID. So they never actually got to meet the team in person. Everything was virtual. So basically what was going on was this person's whole reason for being was to make sense of things, really think things through before executing on things. And so basically they were standing on the edge of the beach, being asked to jump in the sea and take a swim, and they were refusing to do it because they didn't know what was on the floor of the ocean, because they had no way of knowing, right? So this was massive. So with this person, you instantly had a window on why they weren't performing as a salesperson. And then you could see, well, where would they be good? What kind of sales would they naturally like? Well, complicated sales. And what do they need to be successful? Well, we need to give them more certainty. We need to make sure they've got access to all the information they need to make sense of stuff, right? So they can go and sell. And so, this is the kind of way this stuff comes out. And otherwise, what would have happened was they would have spent, I don't know I think the salary is about 48 grand a year, right? So they'd be spending that plus 20%, like I said earlier, plus the cost of hiring, and getting absolutely nothing back for it. And I have no way of knowing why they're not getting anything for the salary. So this is, exactly what we're referring to. This is why getting under the bonnet and having a look at what's powering the individual is so important.
I think to add, in terms of my experience, is that you can sometimes get hung up about different energies and different colors, etc. And I think what we need to remember is sometimes it is the art of the communication. And so you may be speaking to I just looked at one of the scores for one of my colleagues where they've got a really high kind of implementer score, but they weren't quite implementing. And the bit that I was missing was the pragmatism, that they needed to buy into the why, not from a strategic perspective, but just in terms of the goal. And as soon as we made that tweak, it was like, oh, okay, why don't you just say that? And you're like, oh, okay, and it wasn't that their scores or their quadrant meant that they couldn't do the task. It's just you have to potentially attack it from a way in which they can understand, and that speaks to them. It's the same thing, it's the same goal, whereas somebody else, you might be slightly erring on a little bit more of the strategic thought, or maybe even the game-changing aspect of it, but it's all the same task. It's just tweaking it slightly, and it suddenly elevates it for them, and it speaks to them.
I think that this particular tool can support what we've spoken a lot about, people potentially not knowing what gets them out of bed. But for those that do and are struggling with maybe a bit of backup or support or verification for what those things are, once they've undergone the assessment and got a result out of that, they can then use that as a springboard to ask for what they want in a business or an organization, which I think is really important. The lines of communication aren't necessarily as open in one company as they are in another, so this can help, I definitely believe. John, in terms of let's say we've got people from businesses here wondering how one would go about starting a process like this for their team. Can you just talk a little bit about the detail about the questionnaire and the timing and how that works?
Yeah, certainly. So it's really, really simple. What we do is we set up a link to take the test that goes behind this, and we give an employee or a whole team the link. They go on, they take a questionnaire. It takes them around 10 minutes to complete that questionnaire. The more impulsively they do it, the better, because that's what we're trying to capture, is those energies. Once that's done, within an hour, we have a report which basically looks like the image that I just had on the screen there, plus around about 26 pages of narrative that explains those numbers. And then the next step is to, usually my team, we will sit down with the individual for around 90 minutes. We will make sense of those numbers with them. So we'll basically trying to understand, okay, yeah, we've got a bunch of numbers here that says scientifically that you're like this, but what's that look like for you in real life and in your job? And we'll understand that with them. And the two outcomes that usually that achieves is, firstly, it will affirm what somebody might already know about themselves. Okay, so if they had a suspicion that maybe they were a high-end polisher, that nothing was ever good enough for them, right? They have high standards. Well, we just confirmed it. So that's an instant boost to their engagement and their esteem. Second outcome is it will show them things they don't know. So when we were saying earlier on that people don't know what energizes them, you'd be surprised how often when we ask people to guess what they are on this model, they get it wrong. So it will show them things they may not have appreciated before, and also then boost their self-esteem by saying, look what you can contribute. So those are the two outcomes you tend to get from that for the individual. The outcome for you as the business owner is then we can sit with you and go through all this information, either for an individual or a team, and we can say, right, this is what this really means, and then give you advice and guidance on how to manage people in the best way to get them to a position where they finish work every day wanting to do all over again tomorrow. The next, if you were to go further than that, then we can get into doing work with teams as a group, and we can get into things like considering what energies you need for a new hire, like Piragash alluded to earlier. You can design a job around these energies and hire for those energies. But that's broadly how you would execute this within the business, if that makes sense.
Yes, very clear. Jamie, if you don't mind sharing, was there anything new, revelationary you learned about yourself when you did the assessment?
Yeah, I thought it was quite, I'm just looking at it now, I was laughing at something earlier. I think it was more about the day-to-day line management. Obviously, I'll be careful with this because I got Damani on the call with me, but it was like low energy levels for the day-to-day line management, and probably getting involved with just the, I definitely don't like just days just being structured so I know where I am. I'm not that type of person, 9 to 5 and just that. So I knew that it probably just to be a little bit less than I thought it had, but John brought me back from the edge saying that doesn't mean that you can't do these things. It just means that you haven't got as much energy as the other stuff. And I think that's really important. Someone is in my team. I never used to be a very good delegator, as I used to get told in my last company everyone knows I was with. But I've managed to delegate quite well in different functions now. I'll run a mile from doing an Excel spreadsheet, but someone got surprised the other day when I took it off them and I managed to do it all. They said, "Oh, you do know how to do it?" I said, "Oh yeah, I know how to do it." Basically, I didn't have the energy or want to do it in that sense. So yeah, it showed me a few things eye-opening like that, but it's probably less pragmatic than I thought I was.
That's a biggie, actually, Jamie, that you highlighted there, is that there's a difference between skill and the energy to do something, right? So just because, say, GC Index says that I'm only 2 on implementer, it doesn't mean I can't do admin. I can. I've got the skill. I just don't want to do it, right? So we regularly see people who they're rated in the business for being really good at something, but they absolutely hate it. I met someone once who was really rated for their attention to detail around Excel spreadsheets, right? Financial planning. They were brilliant at it. And everybody kept going to them to get them to check stuff and do stuff. And I sat with them and I said, "Your polisher score is only about 2 or 3. And they said, "Yeah." They said, I hate getting into the weeds. I hate detail. I just don't give a damn. But everyone's constantly asking me to do detail. I hate it. I'll be like, stop, So you can be, you know, equally. I've met people who are 10 game changers, but their ideas are crap. So you know, you can have huge skill to do something, right, and not want to do it, or you can have huge energy to do something and not have the skill to do it well. So you know, it's about, if you've got both, if you're you know, 10 game changer and your ideas are damn brilliant, hey, you know, we're off and running. But there is a difference, and that's very easy to miss in a team.
Did you say that that was Johnson was a 10 game changer, didn't you, John?
Yeah, I suspected it might be, but we probably shouldn't go too far down that rabbit hole, Jamie.
Moving swiftly on. I recall asking you, John, I think I did my assessment at peak lockdown. I think it was probably, I don't know, 2020 at some point. And I think I asked you about whether any of it was circumstantial, because you are supposed to respond on impulse. And I guess we all maybe felt about ourselves and the world in a certain way then, which would be different to how we felt before the pandemic and perhaps now as well. So would you say that regular, semi-regular assessments could be beneficial?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what we know, and this is based on academic research, so there's a lot of work going on to understand this stuff. We seem to think, hypothesis is that your energies are probably hardwired from birth. So the big areas of energies, you know, the things that really drive you, they're probably always there and will always be there. And then there's movement around the edges, and that's environmental, you know. So one easy example is my strategist scores moved up and down a couple of times in the last 3 years, but I'm always high game changer. That's just, and I'm always low implementer, and I've always been that way. So environment can influence it. So if somebody, for example, I think, you know, this was the case with your colleague, wasn't it, Piragash? If someone's in a bad space for some reason, either personally or professionally, both, you can sometimes see a massive collapse in their energies index, and you get what we call a latent profile, where someone basically, they've just got no energy for things because there's other stuff going on. And the last 2 years, of course, with the pandemic, we've seen people's energies going down and being affected because people have, you know, particularly people on the strategist energy have lost energy because they couldn't make sense of anything in 2020, because how the hell were you supposed to make sense of anything? So their energy was no longer relevant. So they started to lose energy. So yes, you can have an environmental influence, but your profile shape is pretty much hardwired. If that answers the question, Caron.
It's very interesting. We've only got a few minutes left, so I just want to give everyone an opportunity. We've very much flown through this. Damani, is there any final thoughts from you, sort of any conclusions you'd like to share with the audience and the panel before we sign off?
I guess my only thought is kind of how, as I'm sat here listening to all of it, I'm thinking, how does this play a role in what we do here at Glenhawk? And I think you might not like me for this, John, but Jamie brought this to me probably a few months ago, and me being me, I'm a skeptic of everything. Just kind of said, I don't think this is the right time for this. I'm not sure. I kind of want to even look at this point. But as we're growing and as you know, as we're entering into this phase that we're in, my immediate thought sat here now is, okay, this actually makes sense to me, and is there a way for us to implement this, and how would we start implementing this? What would that look like? And is it that we look at it from an onboarding perspective, or is it that we look at it from the current, you know, staffing that we have, and how do we energize them? There's a lot to think about. So I think for me, it's just more around implementation and what that could look like if it's something we would run with, and what would that look like? I think that's really what I'm thinking about now as I'm sat here.
And also, the sales director needs to get better at pitching ideas.
It's good to hear that it's sort of you've come a little bit further along the journey of considering it, and we'll look forward to hearing from both of you as to how you've chosen to implement it. Piragash, anything final you'd like to leave us with?
No, only like most tools, I think using the GC index, or not choosing to use the GC index is a little bit like kind of learning to drive without having the theory. You can do it, but equally, if you have passed the theory test, it doesn't make you a good driver. So, it's something that as a business we choose to continue to work on it. But ultimately, aside from culture, which is obviously incredibly strong, we also talk about mental health, and John alluded to it before. We're in an era where there is constant change, etc., constant self-reflection. We're also in a high performance business, and a high growth business. And I think tools like this really support the mental health of employees as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love that concept, and I also think that this is a statement of intent about your investment in your people. There's quite a few different questions around how you attract the best talent, what you are giving to your teams, and I think that implementing something like this shows just how interested you are in what they really want and what you want and how it all slots together. Jamie, anything final from you?
No, just I really like the tool. I think I can't say it better than the guys who just said it then, really. We just need to consider it again, see how it can help us along the journey of where we want to go and scale and help us with the culture. So yeah, it's good.
Thank you. And John, I'd like to second what Piragash said. I would also like a tiny version of you to sit on one of our desks and help us every day. You're an excellent speaker and explainer of this concept. So thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge today. I hope that we have enticed some people to consider using the index or to consider viewing their team strategy in a different way. What sort of last thoughts do you have before we sign off?
I think echoing what's been said, and especially what you said, Piragash, that one has to be careful with tools, because if you use something like this, like a hammer, and you just go around smashing things with it, then it's not going to do you any favors at all. But where this really sings is when it's in the hands of a business owner who really understands why this stuff is important, and then uses it in an intelligent, conscientious, and deliberate way to change the way they lead their team. Now, Piragash, I'm going to make you blush now, but he's a great example of someone who's done just that, because one of the key reasons why this has worked for his team and his business is because he took this forward, and he took this information, and he adapted his management style so that it was specific to the individuals, and that's where the magic comes, which is what we exist to do. We're there to make that process easier, but that's where it needs to be used. Otherwise, all you're doing is, you're going around and just beating things over the head with a massive mallet. And mallets are great, right? I mean, if you're doing the right job in the hands of a skilled person, mallets can do all sorts of wonderful things. But if you just hit things, you'll break them. So I think it's important to see this as a window into your team that can enable you as a leader, business owner, whatever, to be like Batman, basically. Whatever hero Gotham needs, you're the one. Yeah. So for each individual, you're the right leader for them. That's where the magic is.
Thank you. Lovely note to end on. So thanks very much to the panel. You've been amazing. I hope that everyone has learned something from the session. We're a couple of minutes over, but that's absolutely fine. We will, as I mentioned before, we've recorded this. We will have it available next week via the Bridging and Commercial website. Thanks to everyone who tuned in, and have a wonderful rest of your week. I hope it's productive and rewarding.